Members take their ease and we move to the next line of question, which is to the Minister for Infrastructure.
Okay, members, we're now on to questions to the Minister for Infrastructure. Just to advise that question 8 has been withdrawn, so I call John Blair.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Question number 1.
And I have previously provided the Assembly with my position on this matter. My department has already extensively reviewed NI Water's funding model and has analysed the opportunities for NI Water raising additional revenue, operating more efficiently, using financial transaction capital, additional borrowing and using additional public expenditure funding. My department has also reviewed alternative water utility company structures across Britain and Ireland for best practice, including mutualisation, which I know is one such model which seems to have some support here. Indeed, my predecessor reviewed this work again in 2022 and 2024 for the purpose of evaluating if any conditions had changed which might merit further opportunities. Given that nothing has changed in terms of the policy of how NI Water receives most of its revenue, that is through domestic subsidy, and the continuing government sponsorship and accountability for NI Water, then there are very few additional options to be explored. Any proposal to review NI Water's funding arrangements must satisfy 3 key tests, namely, will a new structure help to secure long-term investment? Can the model service the debt necessary to upgrade the infrastructure at the scale required? Can the model provide assurance in terms of controlling the cost burden on the public? My officials have just recently, as this month, again reviewed potential models against these 3 tests, and I'm currently considering that review. So for the avoidance of doubt, I will not implement any review that will lead to household water charges on already hard-pressed families, which I have reiterated numerous times in this chamber and at committee. A model that takes NI Water outside of government control, such as mutualisation, will require the introduction of water charging, no matter what way we look at it. What I'm doing is continuing to work hard in partnership with the Executive and progressing a 3-pronged approach to ensure NI Water remains fit for purpose, which is working with executive colleagues to try and increase the investment available for wastewater, consultant and developer contributions, and securing executive agreement for the water, flooding and sustainable drainage bill to be introduced to the Assembly.
Thank you, Minister. I call John Blair for supplementary.
Principal Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for that answer. And can I ask further to that against the context of human waste on our roads and in Belfast Lough, the Lough Neagh situation, in addition to that, the stalled Living with Water Belfast programme and forensic accounts being called in, how we manage our water isn't in a good place. Does the Minister accept that a review should be undertaken urgently? Governance arrangements should be included in the remit of that review, and that a future review should be made publicly available.
Minister.
Well, as I have said, I'm currently considering a review that officials have taken. We have done numerous reviews to date, looking at all the options available. No one has brought forward any alternative other than those that will lead to water charges, which I am not prepared to implement. If others want to do that, then make that clear. But the point being is the funding model that we have is the best one to make sure that we avoid those water charges, but we don't have enough investment, and that's why we need to continually work together as part of the Executive, but also looking at what else we can be doing to ensure that we can continue with the models there, but sure it's funded properly, as well as looking at alternative methods for our wastewater.
I call Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for last month in March, the Minister announced a forensic accountant to look at the funding and NI Water's finance for 24-25. It was reported that it would take about 6 weeks for that forensic accountant to do their work. And I note from the terms of reference that it states there will be a presentation to management on the 2nd of June. So can the Minister confirm the accountant is in place and carrying out the work, how much this will cost to the department, and when the committee and the Assembly will have sight of that report?
Minister, there are 3 questions there. It's your discretion to answer.
So I suppose just to say that yes, the accountant is in place, that work has commenced, and as it stands is running on time. I will consider that when it comes back to me, and at that stage we will share with the Assembly, with the committee in due course.
I call Cathal Boylan.
Agus go buchas leis an éire as Dr. Frager. Could I thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker, and also the Minister for answers so far. But does the Minister agree that the experience of privatisation and mutualisation in England and Wales have been a disaster? Cormail Margaret.
Well, I mean, we have seen what mutualisation can do, and as the member has alluded to what has happened in Wales, and we have seen that it doesn't necessarily deliver the immediate benefits which others may perceive. We've seen significant issues remaining in the wastewater system, and these companies are burdened by excessive debt and are having to then be bailed out by government. So for me, that is a red flag, and we have to ensure that any system we have in place is fit for purpose and continues to deliver for the people it serves.
Call Matthew O'Toole.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, you are pursuing what I'm afraid is a straw man argument. You're saying you don't want water charges rather than explaining what you will do about water infrastructure here in the north. I don't want water charges, my party doesn't want water charges, but Lough Neagh is turning into an open-air cesspool. We cannot build affordable houses in this place, and business is being held back from developing. All of those things will continue and get worse if we don't have some form of solution. You appear to not have one. So can you tell us, if you're ruling everything off the table, how can we invest in our water infrastructure?
Minister.
Well, I think I have made it clear what I am doing. I've actually pointed out the 3 things that we're doing specifically. That's working with executive colleagues, that's bringing forward legislation, and that is the developer contributions consultation which is out at the minute. There's 3 things that are very clear, but I'm glad the SDLP have now made it clear that they don't want water charges. They also haven't provided an alternative, but I look forward to hearing that.
I call John Stewart.
Speaker, thank the Minister for answer. Minister, it's clear that the funding model simply isn't working, and that Northern Ireland Water is currently not fit for purpose in terms of how it is funded. Do you accept that people are paying for water here through the rates process? And to that end, would you support a line within the rates bill highlighting specifically for water that could potentially open up other models to fund Northern Ireland Water?
Well, our rates bills go towards all our public services, so that is the case. Which actually further strengthens my argument why we wouldn't want to implement further bills, further costs to our households and families at a time when everything else is going up. So we have to improve what we have, but I think that there's ways we can do that within the remit that we already have.
Call Cathy Mason.
Question number 2, Lady Hall.
Following the 2023 flooding, my department commissioned a consultant to undertake a feasibility study to determine if there were viable options to alleviate the threat of flooding in Downpatrick. The study is using information not only from the 23 flooding incident, but also additional historical records. A detailed computer model of the river has been created to simulate flooding events to assist with the identification of possible engineering solutions. Once the flood risks are fully understood, the list of potential solutions are carefully investigated and assessed for viability. To do this properly can be quite a lengthy process. However, I'm pleased to inform you that substantial progress has been made, and it is currently anticipated that the feasibility report will be completed in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Minister. I call Cathy Mason for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for that information. I know it will be comfort to many businesses in Downpatrick. Can the Minister provide a further timeline for the actual implementation of flood mitigation measures for Downpatrick?
So the published review of the South East flooding in autumn 23 detailed 22 recommendations for which the Department and other multi-agency partners will be responsible for delivering. These recommendations include developing flood forecasting capability and further enhancements to communications, resilience and surface water management. Although my department is not the lead agency for the delivery of all the recommendations from the review, we will take the lead in the coordination and oversight of the implementation of all recommendations through the establishment of a flooding review recommendations group. Regular meetings continue with members of the group and a focus on the development of an agreed action plan to outline responsibilities and associated timescales, with the anticipation that all recommendations will be addressed within 24 months.
Thank you, Minister. I call Colin McGrath.
Principal Deputy Speaker, it recently came to light that only half of the money allocated to help businesses in places such as Downpatrick after the floods, help that was desperately needed, was actually allocated to businesses, but instead it was allocated to government departments such as your own. Does the Minister think that this was fair on those beleaguered businesses of Downpatrick and other places, that finance that was allocated for them was used instead for departmental spend?
Well, as part of my own constituency, it's impacted by what the member has outlined. I can only speak about my department and what we were allocated, and we were provided with 10.5 million of additional funding for the response and remedial actions required following the major flooding incidents that he's alluded to. And this was made up of 1.9 million resource and 8.6 million capital, and those were fully spent. But it allowed that additional costs associated with flooding could be met, including repair and remediation work, replacing damaged equipment, staff and other costs which were essential to deal directly with the response and lost revenue. So I think from our perspective, every penny of that was spent and spent in a way that was effective. We probably could have done with more if that was the case, as all departments probably could have, but that's where we're at with it.
Call Andrew McMurray.
Thank you, the Minister, for the answers so far. On the flooding and the feasibility, will the Minister commit the resources to expedite that these are put in place to prevent any further flooding?
So I have been doing regular engagement with officials, particularly around from DFI Rivers, because there has been a huge amount of work gone into, as I've outlined there. There's 22 recommendations, and we need to make sure that we're well prepared, as these incidents will be coming more frequently, as we are all aware, particularly in relation to the climate emergency that we are seeing day and daily. So this is a key priority for the department. I have to say, officials don't often get the credit they deserve, but the work that has gone into ensuring that we move at pace and that we're actually better prepared to deal with what is coming further down the line is something that I have been extremely impressed with since coming into post. So absolutely, I think this is a huge priority for all of us.
Thank you, Minister. I call Maurice Bradley.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Number 3.
The Department's Regional Development Strategy 2035 and the Strategic Planning Policy Statement support the creation of balanced communities, and in relation to all types of housing, the policy approach is to facilitate an adequate and available supply of quality housing to meet the needs of everyone. Council local development plans are the main vehicle for delivering this, by assessing future housing land requirements and managing housing growth in their areas to achieve sustainable patterns of residential development. This process allows councils to address local housing issues within their communities, such as the balance between residential properties and short-term holiday lets. Councils are also responsible for operating effective development management in respect of planning applications for housing, and in doing so, the provisions of their LDP, Regional Strategic Planning Policy and all other material planning considerations must be taken into account. And whilst my department will continue to perform an important oversight role in relation to LDPs, I have no plans to revise the department's approach on housing to restrict the conversion of residential properties into short-term holiday lets at this time.
Thank you, Minister. I call Maurice Bradley for supplementary.
Thank the Minister for her answer there. But, Minister, given the pressures of short-term holiday lets that can place on local housing supply and community cohesion, will the Minister be prepared to set in place plans to introduce specific measures, such as requiring planning permission or establishing control areas to better manage the impact of holiday lets and indeed HMOs on residential neighbourhoods? I hear what the Minister is saying, but it's getting right across Northern Ireland. It's getting to epidemic proportion, and something needs to be done, and it needs to be done at this level.
Thank you, Maurice. Minister.
Well, I'll take into consideration what the member said, and I do appreciate it is a very important issue. As I said, it is related more to the local development plans, and I think it's important that councillors, elected representatives, are feeding into that as best as possible as well. And it's about trying to strike that balance right as well, isn't it?
Thank you. I call Jerry Carroll.
So you're probably aware that there's cities in Britain and parts of Dublin where there's only 1 or 0 Airbnbs registered, but there's a litany of them across the places. It's concerning, Minister, that you don't believe the planning system should be used to crack down on the use of Airbnbs and short-term holiday lets. Would you reconsider this position, given the lack of permanent housing stock and the scale of the housing crisis that so many people are faced with?
So I take the point that the members made. However, depending on the extent of a short-term let or the holiday home changes in terms of the use or the character of the property will impact on whether planning permission is required or not. So at the minute, it varies for various units. So you'll be aware that planning applications seeking the change of use of an existing building for a new build to provide a short-term let or self-contained holiday accommodation will normally be determined by local council. So as part of that process, that there's already provision where that should be done. But I take the point that there's probably units existing that aren't even going through that process. And I suppose we are going through that planning improvement programme at present, so it's something that we could be feeding in to see if there's any scope. But as it stands, there are no plans at this point.
Call Claire Sugden.
Speaker, Minister, this is a well-rehearsed issue, and it's one that's disappointing that the Minister and the Department keep coming back and deferring the blame to councils. You have ultimate responsibility for implementing the Planning Act 2011, and you do have interventions within that Act to take more action. So will the Minister go back and read the legislation and see what she can do and what this House can do to try and fix an issue that has been an issue for seaside areas for many, many years now?
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, we have the planning improvement programme is up at present, and that's an opportunity to feed all of these issues in. They're engaging with local councils, engaging with councillors, with architects, all stakeholders around that who are involved in that process. So I think if there's scope coming out of that where we can look at where we can make interventions, something that we definitely can consider.
Garmiagad Priu Laskin Corla, I was Buhish Lesh and Ira Fosta. Can the Minister outline what work is being done to explore the impact of second homes as short-term holiday lets Liddahall?
Well, I suppose as I said earlier, I do appreciate that the issue remains a major area of concern, particularly in not all council areas, but as members have outlined in certain areas. And as it stands, the LDPs have some means to address the issue at second homes at a local level. But notwithstanding this, I can advise that early discussions comprising of a cross-departmental group between DFC, DFI and DFE have very recently commenced. Broadly, the purpose of this group is to provide an informed understanding of the nature and the scale of second homes across the north and to assess the effects of second homes on the housing market and sustainability of local communities and services. So I'm awaiting more advice in relation to that specifically, and that could feed into the broader discussion that we're having today.
Call Cara Hunter.
Principal Deputy Speaker, thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. This issue continues and year on year. It definitely worsens in the constituency I'm in, Portrush, Portstewart, Castle Rock, etc. Can I ask you, can you commit to an additional meeting with the Department for Communities Minister to talk about this specific issue? Just because if we keep pushing it back to Council, I don't think we're going to find any answers there.
Well, as I've said, there is some work already going on cross-departmentally between ourselves and DFI, DFC and the Department for Economy. So as part of those discussions, I think that's something that we'd be looking at in the round.
Call Philip McGuigan. Minister.
I'm happy to advise that the work associated with the significant embankment failure on the Glenchest Road commenced on Tuesday, 18th of March this year. The works will involve drainage improvements, slope reconstruction and resurfacing works. It's anticipated that all works will be completed by the end of August 2025, with completion targeted in advance of the Isle Lammas Fair, subject to favourable weather conditions and no unforeseen delays.
Gurmugad, and I thank the Minister for her answer, and more importantly the residents of Glenchest Road who have been severely impacted as a result of this landslide since March 2024. Will welcome the completion of this work in August. Can I ask, given that this isn't the first landslide on the Glenchest Road, if the works that you have outlined are looking towards future-proofing to maybe help prevent a similar landslide happening in the future?
Yeah, so to be blunt, it's very difficult to prevent future slippages across the road, along the road, given the ground conditions and the topography. But to reduce the risk and potential for future slippages, my department will incorporate an improved drainage regime along the carriageway, which will hopefully then help to alleviate some of the challenges in advance. Therefore, it's envisioned that the embankment along Glenchest Road will be afforded greater protection and hopefully reduce the risk of slippage.
Thank you, Minister. I call Sean Mulholland.
And thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. And I think, as my North Antrim colleague, Philip McGuigan, has outlined, 17 months for a community to be cut off has been such a long time. I'm glad to hear there's preventative works. Will there be any works to the perpendicular, no, the parallel road of Drumavoli Road to actually take some of the strain away from the Glenchesc Road, just to try and alleviate any future risks?
So I don't have the specific on that one, Sian, but I'm happy to come back to you on that, because it was more specific just to Glenchesc Road itself. But in terms of the detail on that, I'm happy to come back to you in writing just to confirm or not.
Thank you. I call David Honeyford.
Question 5.
The planning system plays a key role in supporting sustainable development and economic growth. It must operate in the public interest and provide a fair and balanced framework for all types of development, regardless of the extent or scale of investment. We're all very aware that planning is a collective issue, and all stakeholders must play their part in delivering the necessary changes and improvements to establish an environment that will enhance the prospects for investment and trade in the North. This includes local councils, who have responsibility for a significant number of planning functions. And whilst I have no plans to revise planning legislation specifically to reflect trading advantages, you will be aware of the ongoing work by my department to bring forward the planning improvement programme, which I have mentioned earlier. And this is intended to improve the efficiency of the planning system by bringing about improvements in application processing times, the quality of applications and the delivery of the local development plans. I believe this is the right approach to ensuring that the planning system works better for everyone and remains focused on delivering balanced, sustainable outcomes. And this in turn will provide impetus in achieving a positive environment for potential investment in the North and enhance the prospects of developing trade.
Thank you, Principal Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your response. PRM in my constituency have seen significant growth in their business through dual market access. They've just completed a plan application that will help them realise that. That took 3 years. Now, that's a company embedded in my community. Anybody else is not waiting around 3 years for a plan application, and this is not the problem. Yeah, this is not a problem of planning, this is the system. I'm asking the Minister, would she prioritise this issue, because this is holding back our economy and our growth.
So, going back to my previous answer, that is exactly one of the reasons why we have. It was actually my predecessor, John O'Dowd, who initiated the work on the Planning Improvement Programme. It's absolutely critical. It's critical for everything that we talk about here across government, whether it's housing, it's the economy, education, health. So I agree with you, and I mean, in coming from a constituency that has been crucially impacted by long planning times, and we have been able to identify common issues right across the 11 council areas, be it staffing and resource issues, and how we can better streamline that process so that people aren't sitting 3 years waiting on an application. But I think that's been a really extensive piece of work, and I think that we will see really good outcomes. So I hope the member will be reassured to know that that actually is a really key element of the work that's taking place.
Thank you. I call Melissa McHugh.
Priolask Corla agus Buhas Lesson Ira for Hanya da Frago Gajisha. Minister, just in the same vein as well, too, and there's a problem that exists throughout the north of Ireland. Can you outline what steps you're taking to improve planning statutory consultees' response times?
So I thank the member for this question, because it is one that, you know, both as an elected representative for a constituency, we all hear about some of the delays, and I have introduced a number of measures to improve that planning consultation process, which include the publication of quarterly and annual reports on statutory consultation performance to enhance and encourage improvement, statutory requirements for validation checklists to make the planning application process more efficient and more effective, the delivery of specific bespoke training to statutory consultee staff on environmental impact assessment, the production of a protocol for statutory consultees to support them as well as local government, and the Planning Statutory Consultee Forum, which is a cross-governmental group which will continue to meet regularly to constructively address issues impacting on the effectiveness of the consultation process. And I think when you're speaking to applicants and businesses and people who are within that process, this can be a real area of frustration if they're maybe waiting on one consultation or consultee response. So I hope that all of these measures will help to see that speed up and streamline it.
Thank you, Minister. I call Justin McNulty.
Yes, to say.
My department maintains its financial records by financial year on the NICS accounting system, Account ANI. Given the time of year, the figures available in relation to claim numbers and expenditure on vehicle damage compensation due to road surface defects since February 2024 may be subject to change. This is because the normal end-of-year financial adjustments on the Account NI system and data management exercises on my department's claims management system have yet to be finalised. I can confirm from the data currently available the expenditure on vehicle damage compensation claims due to road surface defects from the 1st of February 2024 to the 31st of March 2025 was approximately £1.4 million. This figure includes compensation payments and, along with payment of vehicle damage loss assessor fees, departmental legal costs and claimants' legal costs. The members should be aware that claims received in a financial year are not always concluded in the same financial year. Therefore, the expenditure figures for a given financial year will usually include spend on claims that were received in prior years. In addition, although my department has a statutory duty under Article 8 of the Roads Order 1993 to maintain public roads, there is no automatic entitlement to compensation. My department investigates and defends public liability claims, with every case turning on its own facts. In cases where officials believe the department can raise a legal defence, claims will be repudiated.
Call Justin McNulty for supplementary.
Thank the Minister for her answer. Does the Minister intend to review the current penny-wise, pound-foolish approach to pothole repair policy to ensure that her department is delivering long-term value for money, improved road safety, and allows for a more practical and efficient use of maintenance staff who are under-resourced and worked to the pin of their collars?
Well, as I have mentioned in this chamber before, officials are currently working on a new road maintenance strategy for all of those reasons outlined. We have staffing shortages right across the department, but also lack of investment in the Department for Infrastructure, as his former colleague and previous Infrastructure Minister will agree with in terms of her time in office. And this is something that we have been dealing with for many, many years. So it has been important that we ensure that we are looking at, can we do things differently? How do we ensure that we deliver higher quality repairs instead of what we've had to do for many, many years and spread resources too thinly? Because it's important that we are able to ensure a more reliable and safer road network where we intervene.
Thank you, Minister. I call Emma Sheeran.
Lashkin Corlia, Minister, thanks for your answer thus far. Could you outline what your department is doing to use technology to improve road maintenance?
Yeah, so as part of the new strategy that we are currently working on, and I'll be considering it in detail in the coming weeks, we, as I've said, want to focus on higher quality repairs that will be more sustainable, and that will involve the use of modern technology to direct our investments where they are needed most, ensuring smarter maintenance decisions, but also future-proofing our roads to meet the changing needs of society, which will include active travel, reducing the carbon footprint of our operations and ensuring that the network is resilient after adverse weather events.
Thank you, Minister. I call Stephen Dunn.
Principal Deputy Speaker, in 2019-20 your department paid out over 35,000 for vehicle damage claims within our own Ards and North Down section office area. In 23-24 this number rose to an eye-watering 122,000. Will the Minister take action and ensure that the Ards and North Down area receives a fair funding allocation for proper roads maintenance going forward?
So, as we discussed in the adjournment debate recently in relation to Ards and North Down, there's a very technical methodology for how the funding is allocated for each division, and I think we did talk about that at length as part of that debate. But as I've said in the previous answers, there's no doubt that we don't have enough to deliver what's needed to do all the work that's required across our road network, which is why we're trying to do as much as we can with what budget there is available, and trying to be smarter with that budget available, so that all road users, whether you're a motorist, whether you're a cyclist or a pedestrian, have access to good quality and safe roads. So that work, as I said, is ongoing as part of the strategy that's being developed, and I hope to see that being implemented fairly soon. Okay, I'll do my best. So my department, as you know, has been operating under significant underfunding for many, many years, and regrettably structural maintenance funding, which is used to deliver resurfacing projects, has not kept pace with what is needed to keep roads in a reasonable condition, as we have discussed at length here today. Having said this, the Department has completed 2 resurfacing schemes on the A2 Newcastle Road in Kilkeel during 2024-25, with over 3 kilometres of the roads resurfaced. And any further resurfacing improvements will be taken forward based on the priority need and subject to the level of structural maintenance funding in future years. Officials will continue to review and assess the A2 through regular inspections and will also take forward the repair of defects in line with the current Department's limited service policy.
Topical questions. So I called Mark Durkin.
There was a lengthy exchange earlier on the impact of second homes on housing supply. Is the Minister aware of a similar situation, I suppose, that exists in my own constituency, where pressures have been created with the overdue and very welcome expansion of the university, which has created almost a kind of gold rush for HMOs, which is causing anxiety, putting pressure on neighbourhoods around the community, on planning and on housing supply. Can the Minister's Department work with Council to alleviate problems and allay concerns?
I thank the member for his question, and I suppose just to recognise the significance of that announcement in relation to Magee University. It's something that will hopefully be huge for the North West. In relation to how we alleviate the issues, like in many other cases, I think it's important that not just through the planning process, but also in our work with NI Water and any other barriers that may be holding back potential for new housing and delivery around change, for HMOs. I think it's important that we do work collaboratively and collectively to ensure the best outcome for everybody.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. It's my understanding that the publication of the plan strategy as part of the LDP is imminent. Work will then begin on a local policies plan, which will look at thresholds or limits on the number of HMOs in specific areas or streets. But can the Minister assure us that the intervening period won't create a no man's land or a no plans land that can be exploited by developers at the expense of local neighbourhoods?
Well, I think for any piece of work like that, it's important that we get it right and that we don't leave gaps that can maybe potentially be exploited, but that the benefits are seen for the people that they're actually directed to. So I think we have to look at all those potentials as part of that process. I would be, I suppose, we're concerned about expediting any process, but at the same time taking the right amount of time to ensure that it's done properly. So I welcome any input or any contributions from the member or others in the area with any of those concerns, so that they could be addressed early on in that process.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Could I ask the Minister for an update on any progress in improvements to the A1?
So in relation to the A1, as my predecessor had previously announced, I've recently met with Newbridge Integrated College, who've done a huge amount of work in terms of a campaign for the A1, and I've met with other roads campaigners as well, namely Monica Heaney and others who I know have been instrumental in ensuring that this moves at pace. So as it stands, it's open to the consultation process, and they're working through the design of that. So I think we're due to start work in 2026, but I can get you more specific dates for that because I have them. I just don't have them in front of me here, Dan. But it's the intention is to start work next year.
Okay, and I do appreciate that, and I would appreciate a more detailed follow-up answer in relation to this. Minister, do you understand that this is an issue of great importance to my constituents? Lives have been lost in this road and will continue to be put in danger as long as these small openings remain and crossings are not closed and improvements made.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that affects my constituency. I use that road every single day, as I'm sure the member does also. And I think knowing some of the families that have been impacted and have lost loved ones on that road is something that we need to ensure. Like the A5, too many lives have been lost along that stretch of road. So I'm giving my commitment that I want this to move at the the fastest pace possible and make sure it's done in a timely manner. And something that struck me from speaking to those children who were primary school was that, first year, they said about, do you know how scary it is to cross that road when going to school, and using that every day. And from a child's perspective, I think that's something that will always stick with me in my mind, because as adults we're very aware, as motorists we're very aware, but as a child to be as cognizant of it as they are is something that I think is something I take with me all the time. So I want to ensure that we see that expedited as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Principal Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Minister, can I ask you to give us an update on the recent consultation with regards to permitting some taxis into bus lanes in Belfast City Centre?
So I don't have the update with me, Stuart, but what I can do is come back to you on that, because I know that we have also launched the review of the Taxi Act, and there's lots of work around taxis as well happening. So I'm happy to come back to you in relation to where that's at specifically, and hopefully be able to provide the most up-to-date detail on that.
Stuart Dixon for a supplementary.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister, and do appreciate you coming back. At this stage, can you indicate to the House any of the initial findings that you might have on whether there's support either for or against the continuation of taxis in certain bus lanes?
I think predominantly, anecdotally, I suppose more than anything, because it's not something I have been briefed in detail yet since coming into post, but anecdotally we've heard the positives around it. We saw that it did actually help in terms of the traffic congestion, and I've been hearing that from various discussions since coming into post in February. So I think that's something that's important to look at moving forward, but also hearing it from all sides to see what the balanced approach will be moving forward.
Wigan.
Minister, can I ask what measures you are bringing forward regarding road safety?
So road safety is a key priority for the department, and as we've talked about, the number of road deaths that we are seeing is increasing, unfortunately, year on year. And my officials are already progressing work to introduce a single lower drink driving offence, which is applicable to all drivers. We're also taking forward a consultation on options for enabling primary legislation to address drug driving, and we will be consulting on further proposed change to the legislation regulating the use of mobile phones while driving. I've also asked them to look urgently at all of the options that may be available to improve safety for school children, and I also want to explore wider road safety measures such as speed limit reductions, including 20-mile-per-hour zones in residential areas and outside schools. I've also asked officials to reinforce the messaging to help keep all road users safe, especially the vulnerable, because I think it's important that we as motorists, that we are conscious of the damage that we can do as an individual while out on the road. And I think things around mobile phones and alcohol and drugs and things like that are things that many people maybe think, well, it won't happen to me, but unfortunately it does, and it impacts lots of many other people's lives. So we have to make sure that messaging is around that and change that culture and change that behaviour.
Philip McGuigan for supplementary.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister and I thank her for bringing those positive initiatives. Certainly as a motorist and also as a cyclist, I can verify just sometimes how scary our roads can be. Can I just ask as an add-on the Minister if she will ensure that there's adequate funding secured in your budget to bring these measures forward?
So, as I said, road safety is a huge priority for me, and the Road Safety Strategy to 2030 reflects our continuing commitment to work in partnership to reduce the number of deaths and serious injuries on our roads. In 2024-25, my department spent 0.5 million on road safety advertising to encourage safer behaviour on our roads, as I've talked about, an increase of 0.3 million, or some 60% from the previous year. In relation to this year's budget, as I've not taken any decisions on this, and it is subject to consideration of the responses to my department's Equality Impact Consultation, which closes on 5th of June 2025. So on the other side of that, then I will be taking decisions in relation to the budget reallocation.
Thank the Minister for her answers so far. I want to ask the Minister for an update on the pedestrianisation of Hill Street in North Belfast.
Minister.
I thank the member for raising this question, and I think it's attracted quite a lot of media attention in recent weeks, and a lot of that attention has actually been based on information that wasn't factual. So just to make it very clear, the reason that there has been delays in relation to that scheme was not due to the cost, as particularly the members now go on, the member for South Belfast has alluded to earlier on in question time, it's actually due to staffing shortages, as staff were taken elsewhere to Grand Central Station and dealing with the traffic congestion issues in Belfast. However, an informal consultation, as the member may be aware, was undertaken in March 2024 with 9 representations being received. A review of the representations indicated that whilst businesses were content with the concept of pedestrianisation, they were seeking longer vehicular access times for deliveries. Concerns were also raised how access would be maintained for people with disabilities. So I've agreed that officials will commence engagement with stakeholders in the coming weeks in advance of progressing the development of an experimental scheme and associated legislation, and officials will provide updates to stakeholders throughout the process. So we've asked for that to move at pace.
Call Neil McAllister for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for her answer, but it was her party's previous infrastructure minister who had said that austerity was one of the reasons as to why the pedestrianisation had not gone forward. Belfast City Council have recently just announced that Culture Night will be back in Belfast, and the Cathedral Quarter is a hub for that. That's just one example of the benefits of pedestrianising parts of our city centre. Can the Minister outline when this will actually come to fruition, the experimental pilot that you referred to?
That we have to ensure that we're engaging with all the stakeholders who will be impacted, and that's the local businesses and who are operating in that area as well as others. So I think for us to ensure that we get that right, it's important that that process concludes. But as I say, that will be commencing in the next few weeks, and hopefully, all being well, unless there are any unforeseen issues, we hope to be able to move forward with that at pace.
Call Patrick Delargy.
And I thank the Minister for her answer so far. Minister, can I get an update on the A2 Buncrana Road scheme, please?
Yeah, so major road schemes are an important part of the work that is delivered by my department as we seek to reduce journey times, increase reliability and improve road safety. The A2 Buncrana Road scheme will be considered as part of the North West Transport Plan, which will be subject to a public consultation process. Views from the public were sought to help shape the vision and objectives for the transport plan, as well as identifying local transport concerns in the district through public engagement, which commenced on the 27th of August and concluded on the 5th of November last year. The draft plan is expected to be published for public consultation in December this year. So in line with that, then we hope to be able to move on with that. And I suppose obviously everything is subject to budget, but important that is a priority scheme.
Padraig Delargy for supplementary.
Good. Thank you, Minister. It's reassuring to hear that, and you've answered my supplementary question already, but it is great to hear the progress on that. And it was just to see then if you had any other timelines around that in terms of the Regional Strategic Transport Network Plan, in terms of when that will be published, or any further details on it.
Yeah, so as the member may be aware, my department is currently developing the new Regional Strategic Transport Network Transport Plan, which will set out priorities for investment in our road, rail and inter-urban limited stop bus network, including park and ride, right through to 2035. So I expect a draft of that plan to be ready for public consultation also at the end of this year.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister provide an update on when she last met with the DVA to better understand the impact that resource constraints are having on the processing times for driving licences?
So I've had a number of meetings with DVA in recent weeks. I don't have a specific date for the member in relation to the processing of licensing. I haven't met them specifically on that, but happy if the member wants to provide some more information in relation to maybe local experience, that we can raise that with DVA and try and get an update on where that's at.
I thank the Minister for her answer, and I'll try and be brief. Would the Minister, based on that, commit to meeting the DVA again to hear about some of the issues that constituents do raise around the lack of a digital process for full driving licence applications and the impact that undoubtedly has on processing times?
Minister, 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I said, I meet with them quite regularly on a range of issues, and I'm happy to bring that forward to see where things are at and how we can improve that system.
Much appreciated. That's question time. Point of order, Stuart?
Yeah, just to apologise to the Speaker for missing the first question to the